Hi there, in this video we're going to look at something called the Luma Waveform. That's this thing here. Okay, it is controlling or at least visualizing the lights and darks in our image. The contrast, the exposure, the Luma, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to show you how we can control it over here in our Lumetri color panel. Can you see at the top here? Look at all those whites, they're all jammed up at the type. Let's liberate them. Oh, look at that. Okay, and maybe the blacks need adjusting or the highlights. I'm just dragging things now, but you can see I can control the tone, okay, over here and visualize it here in the Luma waveform. All right, let's jump in and get to know it. All right, to get started, I've imported Color Correction G. Okay, I brought it in and I've muted it because there's some coffee splashing noises from my kitchen. Okay, and what we did in the Essentials course and, you know, the kind of basic use of the Lumetri color panel is to play around under basic correction, okay, and under tone, and then start playing with, like, I like to start from the bottom, go to the blacks, and kind of get it where you want, and the lights. Oh yeah, there we go, somewhere in there. And you're doing it, and you're like, that's cool. But that waveform is going to really help us. So I'm going to reset that. So to find all the Lumetri scopes, you can just click on color as a preset, and it kind of throws some up here. Yours is going to look different from mine because I've been playing around. Yours probably starts off looking, let it get back to normal. All right, so yours probably looks like that, maybe. Okay, I've adjusted my size just so I can see the waveform for you. Now, we're going to be looking at the Luma waveform. So by default, probably on yours, unless you've been messing with it, you've got waveform RGB selected. Okay, it's got a little tick next to it. And it's set to, the waveform set to RGB. That's fine. What we're going to be using it for is Luma. Now you will find tutorials, I don't use the Luma waveform RGB. Some people do, I don't. And we're not going to cover every single one of them. There's so many options in here. So what we're going to do, and it's very common to do, is to use the waveform, but have it on Luma. What does Luma mean? Do you remember? Luma means that there is, it's the brightness, luminance. So you can instantly see, can you see up the top here? This is smashed right at the top. It's at 100 IRE. IRE is a measurement that we use in video, and it just, like, the acronym is like the International Radios Engineers, something like that. It's just like, that is as high as the measurement could go out for broadcast television back in the day. You can actually go higher and lower now, but for what we need, 100 is max white and 0 is max black. And you can see there, looks great. You're like, awesome. It's almost touching the blacks, but not too much. Okay, if I grab my blacks over here, can you see if I go too low, okay, trying to fix it, can you see I start losing all the blacks in here. They start smushing together. Okay, they call that clipping, where they're all kind of mashed at the bottom there. Can you see over here in my waveform? So we don't want that. So this scope's really handy to go, okay, I want the blacks, I'm just gonna leave those where they were. And it's the whites here that need a bit of work. Can you see most of the information is down the bottom here, but there's this like stuff squished at the top. So I'm gonna work with my whites. And this is like, even if you take nothing else of this course, you're like, I'm not gonna use scopes. It is really interesting to see what this control here is doing to the scopes, okay, especially under tone. So let's look at whites and keep an eye over here. I'm gonna drag whites, okay, down. Can you see it starts unpicking it from this top there? Look at that, there's some information all the way up here. And let's, I'm gonna undo it by double clicking anywhere on this line. Okay, so back down here, you can see the whites coming back now in the glass, and I get a bit more detail. And how far do you go? You just want it to be in this kind of like 90 area. You don't have to be like bang up 100, it doesn't have to be like maximum to the tippy top. Okay, and you can clip things off. Like we talked about my shiny point on my forehead, that gets really shiny. And if I lower this down to like accommodate the shiny reflection on my forehead, it wrecks everything else. So there's not a, like, it's just a, what I'm trying to get at is there's no hard and fast rules. It's about you being able to understand what you're doing with these whites, and if you are like maybe clipping stuff where you might have not thought you were. Okay, so let's get here. The other ones that are really interesting is just working your way through. Can you see like blacks, shadows? Why is there blacks and shadows? Are they not the same thing? What happens is Premiere Pro is actually going to be adjusting. Blacks is the stuff right at the bottom here. Okay, shadows is this chunk here close to 0. Let's have a look what it is. So shadows, I'm going to drag it left and right. Can you see it's not touching the bottom stuff, but it's grabbing that like low part, the stuff in the kind of 20s and 30s, and adjusting it. Okay, so you might decide that actually I want to kind of bring them up a little bit. I've got a black top on the kitchen, so we don't want to get it too high. There is a lot of black in there, so there is going to be a lot of information along here. Okay, let's have a look at highlights. The same thing. It's not the tippy top, it's this kind of chunk underneath it. Let's have a look. Highlights, you can start spreading. I'm still kind of going back and forth and looking at to make sure I'm not wrecking my image or getting it to where I want. But I'm also looking at the waveform. Can you see it's leaving the stuff at the top? So there are some nice specular highlights. Is that a word? And I'm just adjusting the stuff underneath it. You see I've gone quite far here, but I feel more confident because I can see it. Same with contrast. Contrast is a really interesting one. Watch what happens in here. It pulls the top and the bottom. Okay, so it's quite a big, it's kind of, you can see it there, but it's pulling it into the middle. Okay, so we're adjusting the contrast here. Do we want the contrast to be really high and separated? It might be a visual effect, but at least we can kind of see now in the graph what we're actually doing here. I think I want a little bit of that. I'm adding contrast. Ooh. Okay, and exposure, watch this. See the big shift? Okay, down, up, down, up, down. Okay, some people, I always start at the bottom, blacks, whites, shadows. You might decide, a lot of people will start with exposure first and then correct the rest of them. I don't know why I prefer this way. A lot of people do start at the bottom and work their way up. I find I get a better result. These are two big broad changes. Okay, I like to kind of work this way and do a final adjustment with exposure if I need to. That's the real big broad stroke. Now, one thing I want to acknowledge here is that, remember, this is just a visual representation of this, looking at it in a weird kind of Luma waveform instead of like this, like lots of little pixels and colors. So it's only dealing with the exposure, the lights and the darks, okay? So that's what it's good for. And when I first kind of learned about it, I felt like, so let's say this Lumetri kind of tonal range here was what actually controls this, and it's not. It's just, you can use anything in this panel to control your lights and darks, and it will show over here. So for instance, let's get rid of this basic correction. Let's say that you're not basic anymore, you're advanced. So I'm gonna go reset, all that good work. Okay, and you're gonna be a curves person from now on because you're like, I loved curves. Okay, so you are doing the exact same thing. Look, I'm moving this up and down and I'm controlling this. There's no difference. So it doesn't really matter. You could use a little bit of curves and a little bit of basic correction and a little bit of hue and saturation curves and then a little bit in here under the, HSL secondary. They all have kind of, some sort of connection to it. So let's have a little look at curves because that's one that I use quite a bit. So let's fix this one. Now, in a previous tutorial, I said, just do the S curve and you're away. Let's wreck this one. Okay, because I don't know, this one is overexposed. Not on purpose, but I found this example for this particular tutorial, so it doesn't work. So how do we get rid of our graph? That's right, just double click anywhere. So what I want to do is try and bring down the whites. So remember, whites are at the top here, okay, and blacks are down the bottom here, and there's whites I need to bring down. So not just, like, I don't want to bring just this stuff. I want to bring, because it's still smashed up there. Okay, I want to actually grab this first one and actually say, can you see if I lower this first dot, can you see the scope coming down? Look at all the information that's in there. He was lost. And if we turn this on and off, you can see. So it doesn't really matter whether I'm using this or the basic correction. Let's do some other stuff. So the blacks, do they need to be darker or lighter? They don't need to be darker, so I don't need to drag them this way. Where are we? Okay, because they get too smushed at the bottom. But maybe I grab this part, which is the kind of dark-ish stuff, and do I want to make it lighter or darker? I'm looking at the graph, I'm looking at the image. It's a combo deal. I want to make them a little bit darker. Okay, and maybe the midtones here, do I want them to be a little darker as well? Okay, or up a bit higher. Okay, can you see mixture of looking at this, looking at the graph, you're able to manipulate the Luma wave. All right, before, after, I'm happy with it. Maybe even the dark's darker. Maybe some of this stuff, some of that kind of mid stuff to get darker. Or no, maybe some of this. All right, so that is the Luma waveform. That's our first scope and probably the easiest to understand. Or I hope so, because you're in for a treat for the next two. But yeah, and it's to do with contrast, lights and darks, the Luma. All right, let's get on to the next video.